I mean, the book that really comes to mind is The Death of Ivan Ilyich. I mean, that book, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, like that kind of gives you kind of like an existential response of like, oh my God, am I living my whole life as a lie or something? So, but it's very profound in that sense that, you have this man who, by society's standards lived a very successful life. He was a lawyer, he got married, he had a lot of money, but he didn't really live for his own decisions. He kind of lived for recognition of others. And I think, again, there's a lot of nuance here with that, because I don't want to say, obviously, for Aristotle, for instance, just to go quickly back to him, you need to have a level of wealth for him. He says you need to have some money in your life, or you're not going to have a very flourishing life. Like if you're completely broke, you're homeless, that's not really what he's going at, right? Like you need to have friendships, you need to have some degree of wealth, and then from there you have the kind of foundations to kind of build a flourishing life. But, to go to Leo Tolstoy's story, and, there's that book, there's How Much Land Does a Man Need, which is a very, very short book, but it's an excellent book as well. It's really just recognizing why you're chasing the things you are chasing. And that can relate to your social circles, which he talks about in The Death of Ivan Ilyich, right? Like when he's in his deathbed, like there's a part in the book where basically all his coworkers are right there, and the first thing they're talking about is like, will I get a promotion once he dies? Those are kind of like the first thoughts they're talking about. Later on, like they don't even want to go see him because they don't want to get like bad luck, and for them to get sick as well. His wife also like becomes distant. And he, throughout the book, he kind of makes peace through these dreams of death. Like part of it is he's so scared of it, but also it's kind of comforting with kind of the realization that a large part of his life, he didn't live for his own sake. He lived it for others, and to what that appeared. So I think this type of topic can kind of sway so easily to one way or another, where I think there's a lot of nuance, where at the end of the day, we're human. There's a lot of maybe flaws or decisions or things we do for the recognition of others. And that's okay at the end of the day. Like that doesn't mean you have to eliminate or like chop it off like an arm, because it's just part of being human. I think recognizing and just being aware of these things, most people I feel like aren't even aware. They just kind of blindly chase a career for money, or they blindly chase a relationship because they're attractive, right? Like they're not even aware. So I think that's maybe the starting point, for that.
What I interpret from Tolstoy's kind of this message that living for others is not the way, is these desires have to be yours, and that goes for both the desires of the body and of the mind, because you don't want to drink because other people are like telling you to drink. You want to drink because you want to feel nice and at your perfect level. But also with the mind, I guess, like we're having quite an intellectual conversation right now. I wouldn't want to I could have come on here and basically asked you all the questions that I know the algorithm would have rewarded, but I wanted to ask you, Nick, the questions that I'm curious about, and the questions that I think we could have the best conversation for. And so I feel like that's two different examples. It just has to belong to you, because otherwise yourself isn't. The self is like, if your desires belong to other people, it is so like distant from yourself. You're so detached. You're not like grounded. You're not living for yourself. There's like John Paul Sartre says, "Hell is other people." From my understanding of that quote, I think what he meant was that hell is being in this, living for the gaze of always being in the gaze of other people. And I think the reason why that's so bad is because it's like your free will is outsourced. Yeah.
It muddies the water on your sense of self, like the more you the more you unintentionally let outside influences into your desires and your consequential behaviors, there's less clarity around, well, what did I actually want? Because it can get to the point where you're even trying to convince yourself that that's what you wanted. I mean, so many people that give into like marketing schemes and things like that, if you ask them why they bought that thing, their brain probably does come up with an excuse. Oh, we needed this new cleaning product for the bathroom. But no, you're kind of just captured by the advert, because your mate got one and you wanted to have the pleasure that they had from it. And it's a very hard thing to decipher, isn't it? What is pulling me into this thing? And that self-knowledge, that sort of making that mixture in you so pure that it's yours, that takes real agency and real authenticity, which is, again, one of these skills that you just have to gain through like personal experience. I think that's the key theme of this conversation so far. Maybe you have to like give into a desire that's not yours to then get to an outcome and go, that felt like fundamentally not in line with me. So why the hell did I make that choice? And then you learn, and the pendulum swings the other way. But yeah, I really like that. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think Leo Tolstoy was, in his later years, definitely a lot more, he had a lot more critique on what art had become, which really relates to all of this with, beauty, with pleasure. And to kind of talk about that topic, he really asks, what role does like art play in human life in relation to all those things? Because he was really, in the sense, the concept of, the gaze, right? Like hell is other people is really like the perception of yourself is kind of based on other people's, because you're kind of in an environment where other people you don't know what they're judging you about. You don't know how you look to these people. So I think with his books, it's a way of critiquing these concepts, because at the same time, it's so modern at the same time. When I read How Much Land Does a Man Need? I mean, it's like maybe 20, 30 pages, and it's such a simple story about how much more land do you need? How much more do you want? All these goals you're creating, it's always more and more and more. Once you get to that goal, you always want more. And obviously part of it is inherently human, but it's like, how do you deal with those things? Can you realize that maybe your pursuit of wealth is a form, like we talked about, utility, right? What is it for? What is that wealth for? Do you really need more of that? What is it like? What are you buying with it? Like, why do you need to buy those things? So I think those are all important questions. I think Aristotle and Leo Tolstoy both kind of bring up and critique. And it's insane because it feels so modern, right? Like for Leo Tolstoy, I mean, it was a couple hundred years ago, Aristotle a couple thousand. And it's just so, yeah, you can relate to it so much in today's world.